Welcome to eVENT's Demystified podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is Anka Trifan, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
All right. Welcome everyone to the 3rd episode of eVENT About It, streaming live today on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm your host, Anka Trifan, and today I'm super excited to bring forth a brand new format for the eVENT Demystified podcast. Honestly, I haven't done this before. I have never recorded a live episode. I have streamed episodes before, but this is definitely a brand new format. So we're going to go with the flow, and it will be fun because a lot of the things that are going to be discussed will keep you entertained, I promise. Now, this podcast is brought to you by Trifan Events, a woman-owned event production agency and technology that deploys high-value production services and AI tools and strategies for events as well as entrepreneurs. If you're new to our current series, eVENT About It, which I credit to Megan, my co-host, which I hope you have tuned into the previous episodes, you would know by now that there's 2 episodes recorded now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and whatever you get your podcast. And we had so much fun unpacking some amazing event stories, unbelievable event stories, if you ask me, while also providing valuable insights drawn from real life experiences that were shared by us, but also by seasoned event professionals. So today we're going to be doing that again, only this time, not only am I joined by my beautiful co-host, Megan Martin, for the series, but we have 2 more featured guests that are gracing us with their presence, David Stevens and Jihan Donawa Gibson. Before I bring them in, I want to extend a huge thank you to every single one of you that joined us for the launch of this series. We've had some amazing feedback so far, and thank you to all of you that have submitted their incredible stories. Now, we are still taking stories because we still have quite a few episodes that we want to record. So your support and your contributions are what makes this series possible. So make sure that you use the link, which is going to be in the comments, also in the episode notes, and submit your amazing stories. And today what we have is one interesting story that we're going to kick off with, and then we're ready to unpack whatever you have. So if you have something that you like us to talk about, please put it in the comments, in the chat, and we will unpack it. We're going to discuss the toughest event challenges, but also explore what we do differently to ensure a successful outcome. And now, without further ado, let's bring our guest in, joining us to dissect and demystify more challenging stories, highlighting the lessons learned and strategies that can help you navigate your own event-related challenges. Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the show. Megan, you're looking great and mighty. Thank you for joining me again. And
so glad it's Friday.
Yes, with us today, we have David and Jihan. I would love for each one of you to maybe provide us with a little bit of a brief introduction for anyone that's new to the show. Who wants to go first?
I'll go second.
Perfect. Jihan Donawa Gibson. I am the Senior Partnership Manager at Swoogo, but prior to lockdown and COVID and being 7 months pregnant and not knowing what to do, I was a corporate event planner. So a lot of pharma, a lot of finance, all of that good stuff. So definitely good stories. David?
Yeah, I am a 20-year recovering event professional. I was in corporate for a while. I worked in concert tours. I worked in radio. I worked in sports, NASCAR, MLB, etc., and tech. And now I focus on our wellness first, third party. So we put wellness at the forefront of meeting and event planning so that people can get a higher ROI out of their existing events.
Fantastic.
I felt like I said that very like Ben Stein mediocrely.
I think you did great. I mean, did you also mention that you're like the fittest event professional, male professional life? Is that part of your bio?
6-time fittest male event professional according to the CrossFit world.
All right. Well, here's what I want to kick off our conversation with just to get us warmed up. I would love to hear from everyone that's in the chat. What is the most unexpected or maybe crazy thing that you've ever witnessed at an event? Feel free to share that in the chat, and let's see who has maybe the wildest event story. And then for all of us, while the chat is warming up, I'm curious if any of you had like something wild that has happened or you've seen at an event that you might want to share.
It's not that crazy, but one of the things that happened to me during COVID, obviously we were doing all virtual everything, and I was in the middle of a panel discussion of a medical conference we were doing globally, and the chair moderator of the session was based in Italy. So in his defense, it was very late, but he fell asleep in the middle of the session, and no amounts of chat or texting or anything would get him to wake up. He was literally live streamed asleep moderating a panel.
He was on camera.
On camera.
Just like, can you show us what that looked like?
Like he was sitting just like this. It was just like for like 15 minutes. It was crazy.
Was he like an older gentleman that maybe like his circadian rhythm is kind of like confused?
It's hard to even be mad at that. If he could fall asleep like that guy probably sleeps amazing on planes, and I hate him for that.
I thought maybe he wasn't asleep because he was so stoic. Like I was like, maybe he just has his eyes closed. So the producer of the session was like, "Are we sure he's awake?" And I was like, "Honestly, I don't know. Like I'm not even sure." And I was texting his phone. Like at one point, we were like, "Does anyone have his wife's phone number to like go in and like slam the door or do anything to get his attention?" But after about 15 minutes, he woke up and joined the conversation.
At one point, were you afraid that he wasn't alive?
Yes. Yes, because that also happened to me at an event in Chicago.
That's not the story you led with? Not the dead story?
We should not have Megan go to events anymore because everybody's falling asleep.
No, there was one show I did in Chicago, and the president of the association at the time was like kicking off the conference, and he no-showed. And so we were calling, texting, calling his room, no answer. And finally we sent security to do a security check because like I literally was drawing straws with my boss of like who was calling his wife to tell her that he was dead in Chicago. Thankfully, he overslept and was in the shower while we were like texting and calling repeatedly. But then I awkwardly was there standing in security with the president of the association in a towel because he had literally just stepped out of the shower when we were like banging on the door.
I had a guy get arrested trying to get in my party.
What?
And he was an executive who was coked out of his mind in Vegas.
Oh, tell us more.
So we were at an industry conference, and we threw this. It was in Vegas. We threw like the party of the conference. Actually, the conference organizer canceled their party because we outdid them on their own party. And we had a ton. We had like 15 partners. We had fire cannons. It was at a brand new, it was a day club normally, but it hadn't opened officially yet. So we got in before. And so we threw a nighttime party and just, we went all in on it and like blew it out. And this chief data officer like literally tried to sneak his way in, didn't get in. They told him, "Hey, we're full," or we were like, "We're closing." There was like 30 minutes left. Anyways, and then at one point he like ran past, like stiff-armed one security guard, and the other guy clotheslined him. They picked him up, zip-tied his hands, took him downstairs, and that's the last I saw of him. I was like, "Oh my God, we did it. We threw the party."
You did it,
I
Jill.
also love that you threw a nighttime party at a day club. Like that's amazing.
Well, because it's not being used, right? The
No,
day club
totally.
is-
It makes sense. I totally get it.
I hope
Yeah.
that was some cost savings because it wasn't being used. They're generating revenue.
we got actually the group that owned it had some kerfuffles during a previous event I'd had at another venue. And so, yes, we got a heck of a deal because they wanted to make things right.
Worth mentioning, Chris in the chat, he said, I have been at this over 35 years, I suppose, in the event industry, and have seen all possible tech failures. I'm right there with you, Chris. And unfortunately, many human failures, from stalking number one fans, number of acts of artists, and crews trying to sabotage shows, and managers doing
Wow.
the same. Oh my gosh, I want to hear more about, crews trying to sabotage shows. Sounds like crazy. Okay, there's another one coming through. Let's see this one. Sounds awesome.
Chris,
Yes.
didn't you also just say murder
He
previously?
did say murder. I'm
I
like,
think
give
he
us
was
more
trying to say that
context.
to me. I think he was saying that in reference to me, that I've had like someone fall asleep. I thought it was dead. The president of our association I thought wasn't alive in his hotel. I've only had one person actually die at a show. That's it. Just one person in 20 years.
Just one.
Just
That's not
one. I mean, that's
statistics. They're so
amazing.
low. So low.
That's
I have a
well
good
below the
girlfriend.
industry average.
Right. I have a good
Just that.
girlfriend who used to be a manager at a hotel, and she's like, you would not imagine the number of people who die in a hotel. And I'm like, that
A
is,
lot of people do.
I mean, yeah, but thinking about those stories, it's pretty
Right.
horrid.
Well, talking about drunk hotel guests, somebody here, I can see the name in, let's make sure that, oh yeah, Nicole. For some reason it doesn't show in StreamYard, but basically was said, let's go back to that story really quick. David, he's
Oh my God,
supporting
we need
here.
Chris as a
Yes.
guest. Chris
So
is
we had
coming
a
on
drunk
as a
hotel
guest.
guest break into the kitchen to try and cook something in the middle of the night. That sounds a bit like me if I'm on low protein. I mean, and then, okay, maybe setting off the fire alarm. And all my attendees had to get up and evacuate the hotel in their PJs. Oh my gosh, the drunk guests were not a part of my group. Oh, good. That's good to know.
Thankfully, I think we've all been there where like HR and security is like, I'm going to stand here while you pack your bags because you no longer have a job.
Yeah.
Tell me you should have brought back room service sooner without telling me you should have brought back room service sooner.
Right. Exactly.
This
okay,
also
one more.
feeds totally into David's whole thing of like mocktails and not bleeding with alcohol at events. Like,
so this doesn't happen to you.
Right. I have an alcohol is a hell of a drug story. So it was a it was a financial conference, and it was a beautiful dinner in New York Public Library. And I think like this is how memorable this woman was, the attendee versus the speaker. I think it was like a 4-star general, like something, right? That was the audience, but she was so lit, and we had mic runners around, and she kept waving her arm because she wanted to ask a question, and everybody was avoiding her. And eventually she got so fed up that she walked up to the stage, got on stage with the generals, and we're like, thank you for your service, and touching their ties. And we're like, nope, security, boop. But like, I don't know if this is the best part or the worst part, but homegirl showed up the next day. Full Kanye. She showed up the next day, and I was like, good for you. You hold your head high. It's probably spinning right now, but you hold your head high.
Oh my gosh. That's
by the
amazing.
way,
okay, let's take one
more.
more.
Y'all see in the comments?
Yeah, that's why I want to put one more up here from Marian. At the Web Summit, one of the cable cams fell on the audience. Everything stopped. The speaker said, we have some small technical issues, disappeared from the stage, and left everyone wondering what was happening for about 25 minutes without saying a thing. I feel like this talks a lot like one of the stories we've had previously, Megan, on eVENT About It, where we talked about this like break in the event flow because somebody decided to not show up and just waiting in the front row for their turn. And this is kind of the same way, like nobody's saying anything, everybody's wondering what the hell just happened, and is anybody gonna let us know if we're gonna like continue as planned or not, or just this is it, right?
And 25 minutes is forever. Like the story we talked about, I think it was episode 1 with the wedding singer, was missing for like 5 minutes, and I said in that episode, like 5 minutes is a lifetime. 25 minutes, I mean, cancel.
It's a century.
It's a century. Like, why even continue at that point? Not really.
I
We
have
should
no
continue.
idea.
Show has to go on. But yeah, 25 minutes. Good God.
Well, there's
Okay,
there's
I have
also
one
another
more.
comment about a presenter having a heart attack on the
Yes,
stage.
Dawn, from Dawn. Oh my gosh, put that up. Let's see. So what was Dawn saying? She's like, oh, did you do that? Sorry. Had a presenter having a heart attack on the stage, but insisted on finishing his presentation while we had ambulance waiting to take him to the hospital. Was that you, David?
Look, I don't want to undermine the significance or seriousness of this, but all I can see, for those of you who remember Chris Farley, when he was on SNL, and he would like fake a heart attack while he was doing something and just pounding himself in the chest. That's unfortunately all I can see with this, because if someone's on stage having like I'm curious, and maybe she can put this in the comments. How did you know? Was the person like saying, I think I'm having a heart attack, and then they called 911, and then they're like, well, I might be having a heart attack. I feel like it must have been an event professional, because that feels like event professional mindset of like, oh, I'm dying right now, but can I get you some more tapioca pudding or some cookies?
Wait, just 3 more slides. Just 3. Tell the ambulance I'll be right there. I just got 3 more slides. Let me bang through them real quick. Like, maybe this is why you're having a heart attack, sir. Like,
but this is a great question of like, where do you draw the line as the event professional running this show and like insisting they leave the stage versus like, okay, you can do 3 more slides. Like, where do you draw the line of like, I can't have you die on this stage. I'm helping you, but I also want my show to go on. So like, where's that line?
So she said he was in character as General Patton, but like, my question is, how did you know he was having a heart attack?
Right. And do you have your presenter sign a liability form? If you plan to have a heart attack on the stage, please sign here at the bottom of this, because we don't want to be liable for, I don't know, your insurance money, your family losing you.
Every planner now is like adding a thing in their speaker agreements about what happens if you have a medical emergency in the middle of your presentation. Like, oh, sorry, we don't reimburse you.
And like, if they try to take him off stage and he's fighting back, like, is it even that serious of a heart attack?
3 more slides. 3 more slides.
This has got to be force majeure, right? This is an act of God.
Oh my
For
gosh.
sure. But to David's point, like, that really sucks for that person. Like, we don't want to diminish the seriousness of having a heart attack on stage. Like, that is not good, and you probably should step it.
Chris had 3 of them. Oh my gosh, it's like 3 while on tour and 1 on a golf course.
Yeah, I think Chris needs to be your next guest, by the way.
I know.
Yeah, definitely, Chris.
What is happening, Chris? What is this? Like, it sounds like you've got like a bag full of stories. I can't wait to like get some of those covered. And I have one more before we actually segue into one of our stories that we received from an audience member, from an event professional. But let's see. This one is from Nick. And he's saying that at a hotel I worked at once, right before a major city-wide conference, a vagrant. What's a vagrant?
That's me. I like to travel.
Okay, good.
Or a polite way of calling a person experiencing homelessness.
All right. A vagrant managed to sneak in during the massive check-in and get upstairs and lit a fire. We had to evacuate in February. It was minus 40 degrees. Oh my gosh, where was this? And the city sent us buses to keep people warm while the police and the fire department got the perpetrator out. Okay, that's another one of those force majeure. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a clause that you would think to
exactly.
I mean, sometimes this is one of the scenarios where, like, pardon my French, but like sometimes shit just happens. Like, you're never gonna plan for everything, and this is just one of those scenarios where like it sucks, but sometimes it happens.
Like,
also, I want to know,
not on your bingo card, right?
I want to know what event they were doing in Alaska or
I know, like, where was this
Antarctica?
Yeah.
I'm guessing
it gets negative 30 at my house.
No way. I mean, I am so out of there.
Yeah.
Like, why would I want to go to an event that is minus 40 degrees? Oh my gosh, that's crazy. All right. Well, keep those stories coming. We will definitely want to unpack one of those from the chat. But I want to segue into one of the first ones that was sent, and I probably our only one today. But guess what? We're gonna have more coming up next week for a live conversation.
Wow.
So here's our first story. Okay, everybody, ears, because this is gonna be a good one, and we're gonna have to unpack it.
Just to make sure that we all know, duh.
Canada, got
Makes
it. I mean,
sense.
it kind of makes sense. Close to Antarctica,
Correct.
somebody said that. Now we know. Okay, good. All right, so here we are. Let me set the stage. This is at a Super Bowl VIP party.
This all
4
seems very
people-
tame now.
Very tame. 4 people work together to dismantle a table and try to steal it.
Actually,
The
can
event-
I pause?
Yes.
I pause for a second? I do want to acknowledge that a lot of these things were a number of those things were medical emergencies. So if you have an events team, I strongly urge you to ensure that annually you get your team certified in first aid and CPR through the Red Cross. Just
True.
as we joke about it, but it's something I always did every year at the radio station when I was there, and I had a team that was going to be on site at concerts. And this is going to sound terrible, but I'm not wrong. If somebody goes down and someone on your team saves their life through CPR or chest compressions or knowing how to use an AED, that is insanely good press. That sounds terrible. You're doing the right thing, but
Don't stage it. Just be
I'm
ready
not
for
saying
it.
stage it, but I'm saying is if you need executive buy-off on that, you can also position it that way. Hey, wouldn't you want our team to be in the news for saving somebody's life? Oh yeah, I guess so. Okay, cool. But that's how you can help get that buy-in to be able to do the right thing with your team. Okay, back to the story. I
insert.
apologize.
Okay, that was
caveat.
great addition to what we just talked before. And again, we're laughing, but honestly, none of those situations obviously is laughable. But I mean, in retrospect, when you think about it, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, right? So this is one of those stories. Going back to the Super Bowl VIP party with 4 people on to a mission. Apparently, they banded together, wanted to dismantle a table. I want to know more why it was so special about that table, and tried to steal it. The event was in full swing with high-profile guests enjoying the night. Amidst the crowd, these 4 individuals managed to covertly dismantle this table without drawing attention. I mean, oh my gosh. All right. They then attempted to exit the venue with the table parts concealed in their pants and under their shirts. Our security team caught them at the door, reclaimed everything, and let them go with a warning. The learning from the incident was, well, maybe have more security at the doors. So let's hear our thoughts. For the full disclosure, one of us from this group has submitted this story and has more details. So I would love that person to raise their hand and tell us what was so freaking special about this table that we're going through so much trouble to dismantle it and then try to steal it.
Dramatic pause. I guess the decor team nailed it. I don't know. I think
Was it a venue table or like a special order, like brought in table?
no,
Yeah.
it was what the Moscow Mule cups look like, the hammered copper.
Yeah.
So that was the top with a Super Bowl 50 sticker on the top of it. So it was, quote, branded, but it was really just, it was a hammered copper top and then 3 legs that screwed into the bottom of it. And it was a tall boy. And I guess they thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had a table from the Super Bowl in our bar or in our basement or whatever? Like, I don't know.
As a memory, like as a
keepsake?
keepsake,
Right.
something like that.
Hey,
I have
remember
2
that time
questions.
we stole a table?
How big were their bags? And 2, I have to say this, and please forgive me. Is that a table leg in your pocket, or are you just excited to see me?
1, they had no bags. They had to
It
smuggle
was in
them
their
out.
pants. In the pants.
So it's a high boy, right? So it's not
Tall legs.
so it was a full length.
So what are you?
So
right.
this guy is walking like he's got a bum leg, swinging because he can't bend his leg because there's a table
swinging
leg.
that thing.
There's a table leg down inside his pants.
Oh my God, this is crazy.
And then the woman, so there was 3 dudes and a woman, and the woman put it under her like jacket so she looked like she was preggo.
Oh my gosh.
But
What is the
Like how,
circumference?
yeah, it's
of
like
this
how big is
table?
that? How this makes no
was-
sense.
I mean, it was a cocktail round, so it's not that big, but it was big enough that
But still,
Like 3 or
like,
4 feet? It's 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah,
no,
you can't.
they aren't that big.
What are?
That was
A
like
high
just
point
big
is like
enough.
3 feet wide, aren't they?
It
It is about
it's like
yeah.
Yeah.
it's big enough
But
for
I mean,
like
if you're a bigger person, like if you think about it, like you could technically like hold it like this and your like jacket over it or
look,
whatever.
it was very obvious as it was happening, so it's not like it was it's not like they were
Overt.
slick and they almost got away with it. What happened is they got from the edge of it was at the Santa Clara Convention Center. I'll just say it because the Super Bowl 50 was in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium. There was probably 30 feet from the exit of the ballroom where the event was in to the doors, but they were so painfully obvious. And all of us couldn't wait to get the heck out of there that we were like watching every single person, like, come on, let's go. Party's over. GTFO. Yeah. And so then they're like, these 3 people all come hopping out. And I'm like, no,
what's happening over here?
How lit were they? Were they drunk? And how did they react when you were like, bro, like, come on.
What's happening?
It was full remorse, like immediate, like,
we didn't think this through. Now it's coming to us kind of like, what
How did
were
we
we
think
thinking?
this was because I didn't even get mad. I just looked at him. I was like, really?
Were you a little bit impressed that they got all the way to security? Like, I would be a little impressed.
Well, like I said, it's 30 feet. Like, they didn't get very far. And then, like, I saw them, security saw them, and we all just kind of converged on them, and they were like, ah, shit. And then I just kind of looked at them like, really? Like, you thought you could get away with this? You just smuggle out a table? You probably would have been better off if you would have picked it up whole and walked out like you were part of the decor team.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Come up with a better
and
setup.
Like you're disabled.
Oh my gosh. So to your learning question, David, then I'm curious, like, if this were to happen again, like, do you feel like there's anything more you could have done for security to enhance it and prevent it from ever happening?
I mean,
like,
I guess
don't do such a good job decorating the tables. Maybe, I don't know.
I guess maybe put Loctite on the screws so that they can't snap it and disassemble it. Like, I can't imagine that was something that the decor team even thought about. It was, yeah, because the rest of the event staff was like, what? Did they just try to steal a table? It just was an absurd thing that nobody ever thought they would encounter or experience. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of stuff gets stolen from events, like a glass, a power strip, like stuff inevitably goes missing.
Oh, when I was like 20, we used to steal stuff from like Olive Garden and the little like sauce cups all
salt
the
and
time.
pepper shakers, I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was bad that like doctors at advisory board meetings would like load up their bags with Gatorades, but a whole ass table.
Yeah.
Right.
Could you
Like,
imagine being like an attendee there and you're like, am I seeing this? Are they really? Is this happening?
At least they were remorseful when they got caught. Like, they could be like the executive who tried to sneak into your party that was like belligerent and fighting security. Like, at least they were like, oh, we got busted. Here's your table back.
I mean, not
Oh
funny
my
for you,
gosh.
David, but if they would have tried to like escape security and run with this.
Oh my gosh.
I based on their inability to walk, I can't imagine even jogging. Like, they would have been better off trying to hop.
That's awesome. Well, let's then, like, obviously taking the humor out of this story, I'm curious just to hear your thoughts on, for an event, especially when it comes to security protocols, because shit is gonna happen. Like, I mean, you might have crazy stuff like that happening, but you could also have other things that involve security.
Clearly.
What are some key elements that you think should be included to address some of those unexpected challenges that it might come up. And this could be a table disappearing, or I don't know, laptops at events, especially behind the scenes. If you've ever been part of a tech team, you know, that's like one thing that you've got to secure. People just serve themselves and walk away with somebody else's possession. Like, who goes to a conference and steal laptops and clickers and I don't know, anything that you can, I mean, I can understand walk away with the clicker because you're a presenter and you forgot about it, but to just intentionally take it, I mean, come on, that obviously takes a little bit of intent, right? So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what key elements should be included so we can address some of those challenges.
Well, I know there's a guy named Kevin Coffey who talks about risk. Well, I'm trying to think of the second word. Basically, risk assessment at events.
Right.
And he has a incredible checklist out there. I spoke with him at an event. Like he spoke and I spoke, and I got to sit in on his session. And it is very comprehensive, and it is everything from someone trying to steal a table to active shooter situations.
Right.
And so there are industry experts that are out there that understand that. And I mean, to be frank, like we just saw a worst case scenario thing happen at a event.
Yep.
I think it was last weekend or earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we as event professionals can do is educate ourselves, find the best case template for us to have to ensure that we have good knowledge and that we have a strong checklist so that we can ensure, and if we have the budget, to bring in someone like that so that they can offer that security assessment of our event.
So would you hire a third-party security team to provide that service? Or are we talking about the human element where we would train our staff to be vigilant and proactive in spotting and maybe preventing some of those security breaches?
I think it's
and anybody can jump in. Yeah.
I think it's everyone. Like, it's not the responsibility of just the security team. Like, every staff of the organizing group needs to be informed and trained on the security protocols. Any volunteers you have, any other vendors you have working, like, everyone needs to be operating off of the same security playbook. Because, as we saw earlier this week, and we've seen even something as simple as stealing a table, or the Will Smith scenario where someone comes on stage and causes an incident. Like, everyone has to be operating under the exact same protocols. So it's not just on your security team to do that. And from a legal standpoint, like, I'm not an attorney, but like, you have to show due diligence. Like, saying like, oh, we didn't anticipate it, so like there's no way we could have responded, is not an answer in court. Like, you have to show that you did go through a checklist and you did try to prevent and mitigate any kind of risk and provide safe environment for your attendees.
Yeah, very much. If you see something, say something. I've always trained my staff. Like, I never, just like in retail, if somebody's stealing, it is not worth it to put yourself in danger, but you do have to know the safety protocols. And I've been lucky enough to work for companies that have internal global security, which I was talking to the head of security for a CEO one time, and he was like, more women are needed in corporate security. It's not about muscles, although David and Anka, I would love those muscles, working on it, but it's more about logistics and anticipating those needs. And who better to do that than event professionals? But very much like, okay, who do you know? What's the chain of command? How do you get in touch with security? What's the color of the day? What do the badges mean? Like, all of that is so crucial to who's supposed to go where, who do you talk to, and just keep your eyes open. Like, that's part of hospitality too, right? What's going on? Who's in front of you? Where are they going? What are they doing? So just making sure people know who to go to and when.
Chris makes a great point in the chat. It's dangerous to have untrained individuals reacting, which is why the training is so important. And everyone has to be on the same page, because also, as we saw at the incident earlier this week, there were some people who were not trained in exactly what to do. And it was very obvious that they had no idea where to turn, where to go, what actually needed to be happening.
Yeah. And to Dawn's point, we had her comment pop up here on the screen. There are some groups and some audiences that probably require a different level of security than other events, right? Like, and knowing your audience, knowing who you're dealing with is very important. So you don't put yourself in a position of liability because it wasn't, forethought, like, hey, this is a rowdy audience. Like, we had events where we knew from the get-go, especially live events, live concerts, for sure you're going to deal with a rowdy audience. And let's just talk about, if this was a political event, even more so, right? So you have to have security detail. You have to have some kind of reinforcement to be able to, as much as you are possibly able to, prepare. Now, I listened to a lot of those conversations related to that event, and it was interesting to me to see that at the end of the day, it also comes down to budget. Like, you might say, yeah, I have a need for 100, security guards because this event is crazy. And they come back at you and like, yeah, we have budget for 2. Right? It's like, how do you deal with that? It's like, hey, but it's important to talk about things like that, because that will obviously, in the case of an emergency, will highly affect the outcome.
For sure.
Yeah. And depending on the size of your company, this may be, and if you're a corporate planner or if you're with an agency, depending on the size of the client, they might already have a security team. Like, I used to do events for LinkedIn, and they had an executive protection team. And so every event, the head of security was part of it. And when I used to do the Mountain View Art and Wine Festival, the chief of police would go through the event with us. Like, so it's not necessarily the responsibility that sits on the planner's shoulders is acknowledging it and figuring out how to make sure that it's addressed, because when something does happen, because inevitably something can and or will happen, if you are found, even if you do waivers and all those other things, if you are found in gross negligence, which means you didn't do anything to be prepared for that situation, then you can be found guilty for whatever happens. And sure, you didn't do it on purpose. You didn't even do the act. But if you didn't do the things to make sure that you were prepared in case it did happen, then that's on you.
Yeah. Okay.
This went from ridiculous to serious very quickly.
Yeah,
100%.
Well, turn that around.
But it's important. It's important. Yes.
It is very important. And I love working with security. I love working with like off-duty cops and ex-Secret Service. And I did a program with an ex-VP, and they had to they talked to American Airlines, and they went to the gate, and then we had to walk around the Four Seasons in Dallas. And I felt like Beyonce, and people were like looking at me like, why does she have all these like huge guys around her? But it's cool. It's cool when they come in with the dogs, and the CEO's, whereabouts, and you're taking them back of house. And it's just, it really opens your eyes to, and like, wow, I really didn't think about that. Or did they scrub the hotel list? Do they know who's staying in this hotel? So,
absolutely. And I had events like that for it was a vice president. I forgot who was, I think it was Joe Biden vice president at the time. Who was the main president? I don't remember anymore. It was years back. Or maybe it wasn't him, somebody else. And they came through this major hotel during one of their campaigns. And it was the entire hotel was shut down. So there was no access in and out for an entire day. And once you got checked in and cleared, you are not leaving. Like, you were there the whole time, because that was just part of the security protocol. And there was no access to any pathways in and out, because everything was basically blocked. Like, you couldn't just, leave, or anyone could come through the back door any way, shape, or form, or through the service elevator. None of that. Like, it was locked down. So that's one of those extreme cases where security will take charge of the entire building, and nobody goes in and out until that event is over. But those are the instances where then it's easier to control the outcome if something were to happen, right? And it is a little bit extreme, but it is very, very common, especially in some high profile guests. And as you mentioned, Jihan, VIPs or political figures or whatnot. All right. Anything else in the chat that draw your attention while we're talking? And do we want to unpack anything that has been shared so far, or do we want to segue into another story that was sent via the forum?
I just want to call out Dawn's comment in the chat that all of this does affect staff bandwidth. and that's where the assessment comes in, ensuring everyone's on the same page, because if someone has to get pulled away to deal, like I've had this happen in an event, someone tripped and fell, broke their ankle, staff had to accompany them to the hospital to make sure everything was good, which then meant I couldn't be on site ensuring everything was being executed properly. So it was really important we had contingency and backup plans, and that could be, what if I get sick, right? Like, especially during COVID times, we had so many, it was eye-opening of like, okay, if the main planner goes down and gets sick, or it's something as simple as a stomach bug, right? Or food poisoning, like what happens if someone on staff gets pulled away from their responsibilities? So it's a great point, Don. Just wanted to call that out. And to David's point about doing risk assessment, even if you can't afford to hire someone to do it, you need to walk through every point of your agenda and just do, at a bare minimum, looking at your own layout, your own agendas. And if you're on a tight budget, figure out those key areas where you need the most security, like reception times, transition times. If everyone's sitting in a session room, maybe you can have 2 officers instead of 4 officers, sort of lingering. But it's critical to do it in any kind of capacity.
Awesome. How do we feel about the way we unpacked the story? Anything more to be added?
I'm very happy that we took something whimsical and created real useful takeaways from it. Like, I think one of the things, the best thing about a rant is when it's constructive. Like, sure, you can appeal to people with comedy, but then you get into the nuts and bolts of it. And the comments on this whole thread have been fantastic and incredibly supportive.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone that contributed. Feel free to definitely share your thoughts. And as we go into our second and last story today, I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And if you do have stories that you'd like us to unpack, I have put the link to the forum in the episode comments, and it's going to be in the episode notes as well. Feel free to use it, because again, like David just said, it's not just about talking about it and laughing a little bit, ranting about it, but it's also about, actionable takeaways and lessons learned. And, I know I learn best from my own mistakes, but I also be smarter to learn from other people's mistakes. So if I can do that to avoid some of, my own crazy stories, like, that sounds way more productive to me. So with that, I would love for us to segue into our other story that we planned for all of you. So let's get us started with that here. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. Megan, you want to take that one?
Sure. Let's see.
We're going to our last story.
Last story. Okay. Oh, I think I have a feeling I know where this story came from. This was a corporate reception event that promised to be a grand networking opportunity for professionals from various industries. The venue was elegantly decorated, and the atmosphere was set for an evening of fruitful interactions. Hopefully, no tables were stolen at said function. However, when I arrived at the reception, I quickly realized that the food and beverage options were limited. The only offerings were alcoholic beverages, soda, and fried food. There were no healthy or diverse food options available. As someone who prefers healthier food choices, non-alcoholic beverages, I found myself unable to enjoy the event. After making a few rounds and attempting to engage in conversation, I decided to leave early because there's nothing suitable for me to eat or drink. It was disappointing to see such a lack of consideration for diverse dietary preferences and health-conscious attendees. The learning from this incident, inclusive food and beverage options. So I have a
All
feeling
right.
this also came from David. This is his passion area.
I have a lot
you-
to say about this too. I mean, I can sort of feel the pain of this person because I've been at those kind of events where I felt somewhat excluded from the entire happening because one, I get hangry if I'm hungry. Okay. So it's like, that's not a good mindset to start like having a fruitful conversations where I'm like, I'm hungry. Like I need to feed myself first so I can actually engage in a positive manner. Otherwise, everything is like a little, on the edge.
But before we dive into the inclusive food and beverage options, because I don't disagree with that, and that's where the story is going to go, I want to tie it into our risk assessment that serving alcohol at a reception with limited to no food is a major issue. And I see
Yep.
Jahan backing me up here because I just had
Huge
this
red flag.
conversation with a planner this week where there was no food going to be served at a late night after party. None. They wanted
That's
no
a
food.
recipe for disaster. What are
And
they
I said,
trying-
under no circumstance, you have to have popcorn, maybe a dessert bar. Like there has to be some food if you're going to have alcohol. I was like,
Yeah.
otherwise it's mocktails for everybody.
Yeah.
So
it's just
from a
water-
risk assessment,
just-
there
it's
should
just
always be
water
Yeah,
and
1000%.
sadness. Water,
and
water,
sadness.
water, liquid IV, Advil. That's it.
Yep.
And everybody being hangry.
This is go to bed bar.
Especially
Go to
on
bed
that.
bar.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
an
All
after
right.
party with no food. So anyway, back to
Okay,
the
so
inclusive
let's
food.
get started in a more productive manner. Great point to make there, Megan, because you're right. Like if you start drinking on an empty stomach, I'm a very light drinker. Like for me, I know my max is 2 drinks, no matter if I've eaten or not. But if that one drink is on empty stomach, that's when you start like getting a little boozy and doozy, right? So no longer in control of yourself, which I honestly hate. So I would never really even attempt to because I cannot be out of control of myself. I never gotten drunk because of that reason alone, right? So that being said, how important do you feel like it's to provide a variety of food and beverages options, especially from a belonging standpoint? Like you want to go to the event, you want to feel like you belong, you want to feel like somebody actually has thought about you. And I know there's forms and intake forms that you can, obviously, if you do have some dietary restrictions, you should make the event team aware, and especially if you have not just insensitivities but allergies that will impact your experience. But for someone like me that cares more about, hey, I want to have a drink that I can enjoy that's not alcoholic and a high protein menu item that I can enjoy clean protein, I'm not asking a lot, but it still feels like a lot if that's really not on the menu, right?
Yeah, to me it's hospitality, and we're talking about ROE, right? Like, your return on experience. And if I want you to come to my event, how am I going to not feed you or not feed you well? I'm not saying we need to have like a 7-course meal, but something that it needs to be a diverse enough menu that somebody can get a little bit of something, because you could stay at home and eat whatever you want. Like I think we have this conversation a lot internally, and it's like, well, do we do AM breaks? Do we do? Yes, because if I was at home, I'd want a snack. And the one thing that I do not want somebody to come away from my event with is I was hungry. Like that's bare minimum. You want people to talk, you want people to interact. They need food for their brain. So I know budgets, like Chris was saying, slippery slope.
Yeah, but they had like a 600 person budget of, what was it?
200K.
And it was intentional to be that budget. So
yeah, to me, it sounds like it was definitely diverse. Hopefully, I mean, you could spend a lot of money on food that is non-nutritious.
On chef
Yeah,
station
on
exactly.
and lobster thermidor
Carving
and caviar. Yeah,
exactly.
So
And like,
Anka and Dave, like what would you want at an event, right? So we're talking about like don't have fried foods, you need something on the menu. Like what are some ideas that people could provide that were high in protein, that are reception finger foodish, that you would actually eat?
Well, let's
Chicken
start with the
satay.
breakfast. Let's start with the
Oh.
breakfast. let's start with the breakfast. How about instead of continental, you give us an option for
Mm.
protein? Like, hey, did you know actually, eggs can still be served? I can still, like, I bring my protein shake with me just because I know most events will not have a good enough option for me to eat, to have for breakfast. And I got to start my day with a good breakfast, right? But that just means it can be carbs, just carbs. Sure, have some carbs, have some options for everyone to indulge. But for me, the one that wants to have 50 grams of protein with her breakfast, what options are there?
This is
Yeah.
why I know I've been hanging out with the two of you too much, is because I was at Costco yesterday doing my, weekly shop trip. And as I'm going through the bakery aisle to get to all the fruits and vegetables, someone's putting like a dozen of the giant chocolate chip muffins in their cart. And I'm just like, would I tell him that's a horrible idea to eat that for breakfast every day? And I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, I've been talking to David on Coconut.
Oh
Your,
yeah,
your,
yeah.
your, your TikTok
teenage
algorithm's all
sleepover.
skewed.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. The thing is, who knows? Maybe that's like their one treat that they wake up, they have that first thing in the morning, and then they go run 20 miles. So who am I to judge, right? Like, you do you, boo. But the whole thing is that it's about yes and. I learned this very quickly when I was fortunate enough to work at 24 Hour Fitness at their corporate headquarters, because part of the registration was, and Anka's going to love this, was are you losing weight? Are you gaining weight? Or are you going to be on they used to still call them cheat days back then, but now they're called refuel days. I guess that's to make people feel better about whatever. Anyways.
Well, if you're cheating yourself eating, that to me is just
this is another discussion
different
for a
conversation.
different podcast.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I would ask people, because that if I have a 6'3", 250-pound guy who's coming in and is trying to gain weight, he doesn't count as one person on the banquet menu. He counts as almost like three, right? And his protein demands are going to be through the roof. His carb demands, all of it. He's going to eat like 2 or 3 people. So I had to just plan accordingly. And what I will say is that same event, this is what completely threw me. The next day, their lunch was so on point. They had two different kinds of protein. They had like a chicken and a fish. They had a vegetarian protein option. There was like a stir fry, or not a stir fry. It was like mixed veggies and tofu. And then they had a salad that had a bunch of beans in it and legumes. And so like their lunch, they nailed it. It was just the reception was just a total miss. And I don't want only, and I don't think you should offer only. Like putting out a line of food that only gives grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, like you're going to have a mutiny. People are going to start flipping tables, right? Like there's some people are going to be stoked and the rest of the people are not. So little things like a salad bar where people get to build their own salad, right? Who's mad at that? The kitchen isn't, because now they don't have to assemble it. They don't. Your dietary restrictions are addressed. People can pick and choose the things they want. They can get more of something that they want or less of something they don't like or whatever. And then having your proteins that are available to people to pick and choose which ones they want. Anka and I were at a North Star event where they did a build your own poke bar, which was
amazing.
You want to talk about expensive. I have no idea how much it was, but it was. You know what happened though with that? Because here's the flip side: is we started talking about the beginning of like, I went to this event. I worked out before I came to the reception, so I was like, great, I'll go in, I'll eat, and then I'll network. But I got so distracted by how hungry I was like, fuck it, I'm out. And the flip side of that though is that poke bar that was on lunch on like, I don't know, let's call it day 2. You know what people are talking about breakfast on day 3? Hey, do we get that lunch again?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's going to be as good as yesterday. Like,
yeah.
Food and beverage, yes, it is a slippery slope, as was said earlier, but it's a massive way to engage people, because when people don't have what they want or you're not meeting them where they're at, they leave.
I'll give you a great example of that. I was at a conference a couple years ago in Colorado, and they didn't tell anyone that the lunch was vegan I wouldn't have served my dog the lunch they tried to feed us. So what happened to the breakouts immediately after lunch? No one was there because
Yeah.
everyone left to go eat.
Go get
So
food.
half the
Mhm.
conference abandoned 6 speakers who were the post-lunch speakers because everyone was so hungry they left the venue to go find food because
That's
the lunch was so bad.
that's so crazy. That's such a
Yeah.
disaster. And to going back to
By
what
the way,
David was
vegan
saying,
doesn't mean healthy. Just for the record,
100%.
Correct.
neither does
What?
plant-based. Just because it's nouveau doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy.
Yeah.
It also
absolutely.
totally missed the audience. So like bringing this like full circle to brand and like activations. Colorado is still a cow town. There are many, many beef associations and chicken associations in the state of Colorado. So then to go in front of a group with some very large connections to the meat industry and then to bash the meat industry, force everyone to eat a vegan meal, they isolated more than half of the audience simply by the rhetoric of doing it.
And you're also
Absolutely.
pissed because I paid to get here or whatnot, and now I have to go and buy my own food. Like, you got to be kidding me. Be so for real right now. And I like Don's comment because, you know, people are always like, I want healthier breaks. I want healthier breaks. Yes. And you can have, like you said, David, you can have your smoothies, but you bet your ass you better have your cookies because people will revolt if you don't give them something sweet. Like,
By the way, please
you
add
cannot
protein
choose
to the
for them.
smoothies. Don't just
Yes.
have smoothies.
Oh my
Add
gosh,
protein
carb
to the
load.
smoothies.
Just because it's smoothie doesn't mean it's healthy. I'm just
Sugars.
saying. Okay. Anyway,
Also, I learned
digress.
that
Blended diabetes shake.
David, thank you for, I've been doing my guarantees all wrong, not thinking about the 250-pound guy who's trying to bulk up.
Right.
So, thank you. Thank you for that.
It's one of those things, like, and it's about giving people agency and let them choose, because they might see, to Don's point, they might see donuts at the end of the line. They're like, you know what? I'll say this. I will give a personal example as opposed to being philosophical about it. I went to a FAM recently, and this hotel put out an incredible spread for breakfast. And we were all very taken aback by how extensive this spread was. And they had homemade cinnamon rolls. And they looked amazing. And like 2 weeks before, I was in an airport and I was really craving a Cinnabon, and I didn't cave. And I was like, no, it's happening today. I'm having one of those. So I picked my other food accordingly so that I could have that. I picked lean proteins. I picked low carb options. I picked the things I knew that could support me being able to have that delicious, warm, gooey, satiating cinnamon roll. So it's not about alienating the people that want those choices. It's about just giving them the options so that they get to choose.
Do you want menus published in advance? Like, would you want to know what's going to be served?
100%. Like when I'm cutting,
plan?
when I'm in my prep for my competition, I do not go to a restaurant unless I checked that menu in advance and I already made my selection before I even stepped into that restaurant. That restaurant doesn't see me unless I already had her pre-planned, because I know where my macros are and I have to stay within that. And if your, food option doesn't allow for me, I'm not going to go. Like, I can't. I have to stay out or bring my own food. Obviously not into the restaurant, but you know what I mean, So great idea. Can we do that more?
So
sorry, Dave, one thing that just made me thinking about risk assessment, like you two were talking in the context of wellness, but what about people who are diabetic? Maybe people who have other medical conditions that have to eat every couple of hours. They're monitoring blood sugar for various reasons, diabetes or not. So like publishing those menus gives those people like, okay, I know we're not eating till 11. So I need to bring a snack because there's not going to be a 10 o'clock break or whatever it is.
Well, and the thing I just held up was an agenda, a printed agenda, which I haven't seen since, I don't know. They actually mailed it, which is even better.
I mean, I kind of love that. I kind of love it.
It's very retro.
Come with the luggage tag too?
No, nothing I've gone to except IRF sends luggage tags, but they're always very fun, and I keep them and I love them. because they're the only ones that do it. So it's like, oh, this is a fun treat.
Yeah.
That being also because they take your luggage as soon as you land at the airport. And so it's actually necessary. So anyway, I digress. They put in their agenda continental breakfast. And I was like, oh, okay, you're a wellness summit and you're offering continental breakfast. Do you even read the information that you are preaching? But two, it told me, okay, so I'm on my own for breakfast at that event, so I can plan accordingly. So I like knowing if they're going to deliver or not.
Yeah.
So
I hate continental. It's such a cop out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like you get bread, like carb overloading.
well,
and
and there's
tell me about it.
okay, so there's an anecdotal science because it's not peer reviewed yet, and it's in the holistic side, or I call it the OM side of our research. And exactly. So our company name is Olympian Meeting. The nickname is OM. My co-founder is very OM, and Megan knows her, and so does Anka. And
She is very OM.
I'm very not OM.
You're
obviously.
not OM. Yeah.
So I greatly benefit from having a co-founder like her. Okay, sorry, but there's some holistic health studies out there that are about the brain benefits of protein for breakfast for people with ADD and ADHD. And I told this story when I presented one time because an engineer I used to work with told me that when he had a high protein breakfast, he didn't have to take his meds, and he had pretty bad ADD. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I looked it up and I talk about it. And because it's important for people to at least know that there's new science coming out around it. And I had a woman comment on my LinkedIn one time, and she said, I started giving my 13-year-old son grilled chicken in the morning, which, look, there's a lot of other protein options in the morning. Like the fact that she's giving him grilled chicken and he's eating it, bless her heart. I probably wouldn't have done that when I was 13, regardless. And his grades went up. I was blown away. But like, once again, though, it's not about not offering things. It's about giving people agency so that they can choose, and having that information in advance that you're not going to take care of me makes me a little less excited about attending your event, but it just makes me know, okay, well, I got to pack the protein powder and make sure I have time for a breakfast before I go to your 75-minute session that opens the conference.
Yeah, like how are you going to pay attention to that if you are either not fed well or you're carb loaded? Because I'm telling you, you're going to be falling asleep somewhere halfway through unless you're drinking caffeine until you start shaking, which has happened in the past where I got to caffeinate myself right now, even though my maximum for the day is 1 coffee because I can't stay away. I don't know what else to do right now.
We're going to carb load you and then put you in a room with low lighting and loud music and talk at you with no interaction for 75 minutes and then expect you to go engage as soon as you walk out of that room.
Only one speaker is listed. One speaker is listed.
Oh,
that is cruel and unusual punishment.
It is. My heart
sit
hurts.
my ass down for 75 minutes. You got to be for real.
You want to know the best part? There's a break after that, and then there's a session called Food as Medicine.
It is, but just
not an oxymoron right now. Right.
You can't even make it up. You can't even make it up.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, obviously, there's also people and clients that might be resistant to providing inclusive, food and beverage options because of budget concerns or who knows what concerns. I feel like there's also this element of guest feedback that plays a lot into the future of events. I was talking to an event planner not too long ago, and we're talking about all kinds of different options for events and wellness activations and, options, for F&B. And one of the things that she mentioned, which I thought was very interesting, is none of our attendees ever complained that we don't include that in our programming. And then it made me think, so it goes back to the attendee experience. If you as an attendee only rant and talk about it after the event to yourself and your friends and your cohorts and whatever, but you don't go to the event team to say, hey, it would be nice next time to have more protein with my breakfast. It would be nice next time to have, instead of yoga in the morning, maybe a fitness class option or CrossFit or I don't know, strength training, bear, something else as an option to yoga, right? But if you don't say that, the event team, they're going to go with, well, the event was great. Nobody complained. We're going to do the same thing next year.
Did they give them the option to complain? Did they ask the right questions?
Yeah, so
Because
they would
just
have
because
their
I don't
forms. Obviously, you would have your and whatever, all your feedback forms. But if nobody says anything about what could be done better, then you're gonna think, well, we did great. What else could we, ask?
Enjoy death by mediocrity.
I mean, squeaky wheel gets noticed. And as much
Right?
as I sometimes hate it because the squeaky wheel isn't always right, but
That's
if
the
you don't say anything, you can't complain because if you don't bring it to their attention, it can't even be addressed.
Is
That's
it
what I'm
the
saying.
attendee's job to bring it to the planner's attention?
I don't know. I'm just playing the devil's advocate in this case.
I'm
But
with
not
you,
every
David,
planner's
like,
going to pay attention. And so,
And
like,
they
yes, the
suck and they should
planners
leave the industry.
should.
I'm just kidding.
No, I don't totally
tell us
disagree,
how you
but
feel.
like a lot of people don't even think about that. And we all have been planners. All four of us have been planners at one point in our lives. And so there's so many things you have to think about that go into an event, and sometimes things just fall through the cracks, and a lot of times it's just picking a menu off of what was given to you because you don't have the time or the resources to work with a chef or work with the venue to come up with something not out of the box. But if the planner doesn't know that that's so critical to the enjoyment or experience of their event to the attendees, then they don't know to prioritize it in the planning process. So I'm just playing devil's advocate. Like there's a million things, and sometimes it falls through the cracks.
So I will kind of piggyback on that and say, I think if someone is so overworked, they're so just head down in the weeds that they don't have an opportunity to innovate. I get that. I understand that. I respect that. But I think at the same time, that person is not going to be viewed as someone who is contributing to the business and
I
is
don't disagree.
advancing
I
things.
don't disagree.
Because if that is the level you are being worked at, you owe it to yourself to speak up and say something. And you have to take control of your own destiny at that point, because otherwise
Totally
you will
agree.
be shoehorned into that forever, and you will only ever be seen as the party planner. And if you want to advance, if you're happy doing that, then great, then don't do anything. Fine. But if you aren't happy with that and you're like, how do I change that? You have to speak up. The other thing is, here's the hack. You can use ChatGPT to make menus, right? Well, guess who else will make menus for you? The chef. And if you take the time, because you have to sit down and thumb through the menus, right, and figure out which options are meet your allergy restrictions. But picking a menu is not a quick, easy task. It takes time. If instead you meet with the chef and you spend a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, tell the chef your budget, tell the chef your goals, tell them that they have creative freedom to create menus that are interesting and whatnot. One, I have yet to meet a chef who's like, no, I don't do that. I stick to what's the printed menu. They're like, fuck yes, let's go.
You give them a
you
challenge.
think,
Exactly.
yeah, you think
And
they
I-
want to bang out the Italian and the Mexican every time? No.
Right.
Yes.
And I cursed intentionally to pay homage to the chefs, but they're going to do the menu for you. You don't even have to do it anymore. Take the time to meet with them, let alone they're going to put out stuff that it's going to probably upset the salespeople and the CSM because they don't know what to charge for it, but they'll figure it out. But if you give them your budget, they're also going to be able to meet you within your budget. So it checks everything and saves you time. That's it.
Exactly.
Like, that's the hack. Okay, you don't have time to come up with your own custom menus. You don't have to. You don't have to even pick your menus. Let the chef do what they're good at.
Yeah.
Right.
On a personal
That's
note,
not your wheelhouse to be a chef.
But like on a personal note, I've actually used this technique when I go out to a restaurant. And again, it has to be a higher end restaurant. You're not going to go to, I don't know,
Arby's.
or whatever.
Applebee's.
Applebee's, right? But like you look at the menu and you know, okay, I can have, a clean source of protein and some vegetables. And I would actually ask, the, whoever is serving there, hey, can I ask the chef if instead of like adding all this stuff, all I want is like this simple piece of protein and a side of vegetables. And then because this is my constraint, and I tell them where I'm like fat and carbs are, and let them, ring free with coming up with something that would be nutritious and taste good. And in 9 out of 10 cases, I haven't had one chef say, oh my gosh, that's such a hard ask. You're such a prima donna. No, actually, they take on the challenge because they're so tired of creating the same item on the menu again and again and again. And you just gave them something exciting to do that day, you know? So to David's point, it's like, I would 100% use that technique and see, you know, where it gets you. And plus, you bring them in the conversation. How many people feel like they're just part of the support team, but nobody actually gives them agency to make any decision when you could? And that's an important decision to be made when it comes to your menu and your nutrition, right? Give them some agency to have a say in what could be done better or could be done different than what's always been done.
Totally agree.
Love it.
All right. Anything else that, yes.
Going back to, is it the planner's job or is it the attendee's job? Maybe there's something we can be more, I don't know, open during reg. It's not simply like, what are your dietary requirements? Although I do take those dietary requirements very seriously. If they're like, I don't eat whatever the garlic is, I always call it aluminum because it's, you know, and reaching out to those people individually. You know what I'm talking about, David. Allium, the allium allergy. You've never heard of an allium allergy?
No, I haven't heard
garlic
of that.
Was
and
that
onion?
Tracy that was actually covering in some of her reels a lot of the allergens that I wasn't even aware of? Like, if you want to learn more, go to Tracy's LinkedIn profile. She has an
You want to know how to ask those questions in reg?
Yeah, A to Z, like a whole alphabet of allergies. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even know that it is possible. Anyway, to what you're saying, Jihan.
Yeah, maybe expanding more on those reg questions or reaching out to those people individually, which I know you can't do that with every conference, right? Or every program because budget and time constraints and all that kind of stuff. But it really matters to these people like, oh my gosh, she understood. Or, you know, there was a pregnant woman and she felt so embarrassed, or she didn't want us to feel put out by microwaving her turkey. And it's just like giving them that open space to say like, hey, what else do you need? You know, when I used to do farm meetings, we did those old school meal cards. So when you registered and you said, oh, I need a kosher meal, then you would take it, and just like making that like a group. So if you are allergic to dairy, these are all your dairy-free people. So you don't feel singled out and you're like, oh, how come she's getting a new meal? It's like, these are my special people that have their special place to go. But yeah, I love David's talk to the chef. They love that. They love to come to pre-cons and talk, but it's also the CSMs like, I'm waiting on costs. I'm waiting on costs. I'm like, come on, dude.
Yeah. But if you give the chef your constraints, they should be able to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts, Megan, on this? Anything else that we haven't touched on when it comes to lessons learned on how to ensure that future events provide a more inclusive and enjoyable experience for all of our guests, regardless of who we think that job should be?
I know we talked a lot about food, but the same goes for beverage, you know, having non-alcoholic options besides just a soda or a water. It's really about people feeling seen and heard, and just give people the option, ask the questions. I mean, I feel for, you know, newly pregnant women every time they go to the event. And we talked about this in episode 2 of like, I just don't feel like drinking today. And the peer pressure of like, how come you don't have a cocktail? Can I get you a cocktail? And maybe someone doesn't want to tell you why they don't want a cocktail, right? Like, it's about providing options. That's it. But thank you guys for joining. This has been such a lively conversation. I mean, we're 15 minutes over time, and it's just been fabulous to have you guys both on the podcast today.
This is a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you. With that, I want to also thank all of our audience members that have been very engaged. It was a joy to see all the comments and all the feedback that was shared with us. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jihan, for joining us and sharing your thoughts and strong beliefs on items discussed today. Megan, always a pleasure to have you. Now, for everyone that would like to continue this conversation, we are going to host another live event with 2 other amazing guests. Not that you, David and Jihan, were not amazing, but I gotta get our.
I want to come to Chris's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, Chris is definitely going to be a guest.
Chris, you're invited for sure. And that was going to be July 26th. That's next Friday at the same time. There's going to be a link in the comments, and also we'll have this on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for when this is happening. We would like to have you on unpacking different stories with more learning takeaways and insights. And if you do have stories that you want us to touch on in our future episodes, please do use the form that has been shared in the chat as well. We love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Follow our LinkedIn page and Instagram for all the latest updates and behind the scenes content. Your support really helps us to continue to bring these valuable conversations and guests and insights to all of you listening. With that, thank you for being here. Stay inspired. Keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in events and beyond. Everyone, thank you for being here, and have a wonderful rest of your Friday and weekend ahead. Hopefully not as hot as I'm experiencing right now, but whatever you do, do it well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about pre-fan event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.